for Wills.
Thank you, Mr Deputy Speaker. I'm also very pleased to speak on this motion as put by the member for Jellybrand, my friend, and the member for Mallee. As it relates to an issue that is close to my heart, my parents came to Australia from Egypt 47 years ago, and they fled and escaped a region where conflict was the norm and opportunities were very limited. We know that the most recent United Nations High Commission for Refugees report, the statistical yearbook, states that there are some 65 million forcibly displaced people around the globe, and that includes around 21.3 million refugees in UNHCR camps, and they are half of that number actually under the age of 18. So global numbers of displaced people have trebled since World War II, and the global community must confront what I think is a reality, that we are in the midst of a global humanitarian crisis. The UNHCR validates this assertion really by noting that the number of displaced people fleeing from war, conflict or persecution is at present the highest since World War II. This includes in our region around 500,000 refugees and asylum seekers just in Southeast Asia. I've said previously in this place, including in my first speech here, that Australia must put aside partisan politics to work to find sustainable and compassionate solutions for the international refugee crisis. So I'm heartened by the bipartisan support for this motion that's been put by the member for Jellybrand. Australian governments, businesses, community organisations exploring ways to provide private sponsorship and expand the resettlement of refugees in Australia through formal channels is a very good idea. That the community or private sponsorships programs would allow non-government entities such as businesses, religious organisations, community groups, individuals to meet the costs of visa applications, resettlement services for refugees, and either via direct financial contributions or the provision of in-kind goods and services. I think it's one creative and compelling initiative that can help tackle the global crisis which I've mentioned. And I note, as previous speakers have, that Canada is a very good example of this model successfully being employed. Since 1978, it has resulted in Canada successfully settling more than 275,000 people over and above those resettled through government funding. This motion also acknowledges the efforts of the UNHCR for refugees and the Open Society Foundations to advance this model in many other nations. During the UN Summit for Refugees and Migrants in New York last year, the UNHCR and the Government of Canada and the Open Society Foundation launched a joint initiative to increase private sponsorship of refugees around the world. And business and civil society groups, I understand, will be campaigning for this objective in Australia and around the world over the next 12 months. It's a good cause and a good initiative. As I've said in the past, I've expressed the desire for Australia to take a leadership role in brokering a multilateral solution for the 21 million refugees in UNHCR camps worldwide. I've talked about an international agreement between 10, 15 or 20 countries agreeing to take an additional 30, 40 or 50,000 refugees a year, which would really start to be a real solution, Mr Deputy Speaker, resulting in 500,000 to 1 million refugees being resettled to safe haven each year. And we can only do this with an international framework that involves multiple countries. This particular initiative of private and community sponsorship is just one such way that Australia can make a positive impact on the challenges the international community faces with this humanitarian crisis. And I note, Mr Deputy Speaker, the previous Labor government commenced a pilot program called it was a community sponsorship pilot during 2012, and I note that this government has committed to making the program permanent as part of the US President Obama's Refugee Summit last year, which is a very good initiative by both the past Labor government and the present coalition government. The current program is capped at 1,000 places within our current intake quota, and Australia can certainly can't solve the global humanitarian crisis on its own. It can't solve the international refugee problem on its own, but it's important that we play our part by meeting our obligations as a good global citizen. And I think together, multiple nations can do their part to make a positive impact on the situation that we're all facing. So I take this opportunity to once again restate that we can and must do more as a nation when it comes to the global humanitarian refugee crisis, which is upon us. Because every action we take will have an impact, and this initiative, I believe, will ensure it is a positive impact. And of course, what flows from that is the potential to save lives, and every life saved is a victory, Mr Deputy Speaker. Thank you.